Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us behind the scenes and looking at our businesses. I'm joined with a special guest today, Alicia, and let me know if I pronounce your last name wrong, Lozano?
Lozano, Alicia Lozano.
Alicia Lozano.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
She is a business operations consultant, CEO, and founder of The Motivated Co., a business operations consulting company that gives thought leaders a personalized action plan to maximize their client success, satisfaction, and retention by leveraging the effectiveness of systems. She wants you to reclaim the freedom and time to live an exceptional life, which I love because I'm also world ops minded. So I'm so glad she is here with us today to talk about her 4-hour work week specifically. We'll get into all ops goodness because I feel like you probably needed ops to get to this 4-hour work week.
100%. A 4-hour work day.
Or work day. Sorry.
Yeah, we're not at the week yet, but hey, we're on our way though. It's a step.
Yes. It's a step in the right direction.
Yes.
I am
Yeah.
so excited to have you here. Before we get into what got you to the 4-hour work day, do you want to share your little intro story of like how you got started in the online space, how you developed your company, and all of that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking. I'll make it quick, but I have been an entrepreneur for going on 4 years. I started this ops consulting business is actually my 4th business. And I started in the space of I know it's crazy. I started with home organizing and digital organizing. And I dove into that, and I did that for a little bit, kind of learning about business and all of those things. And then I was like, I don't want to organize anymore. And I was simultaneously going through a personal development journey. Before then I didn't know what personal development was. I had never read a book on self-help or anything like that. And I was doing that, and I got inspired to start a business. I kind of knew that I always wanted to, so I just didn't know what to do. And I think a lot of people are in that space and get stuck in that, right? And I felt like I was there for 7 years. And I have to give a shout out to Pat Flynn and Noah Keegan. I'm always going to attest their podcast, Pat Flynn's podcast, and Noah Keegan was the guest. He gave me some questions, or gave on the podcast, he gave some questions about how to generate business ideas. And so I went to my Facebook, and one of those ideas was what has been on your to-do list for over 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, so I asked that to my Facebook friends and family, and almost all of them in some way, shape, or form, it came down to organizing my kids' room, cleaning up my garage, organizing my kitchen or something. And they didn't use the term organize all the time, but it was something along the lines of getting something together. Right. And so I was like, and this is before Marie Kondo, all of the things. And I didn't even know that that was a profession. So from those comments, I Googled organizer, professional and I was like, oh, this is a thing. I was okay. And then I wanted to be online at that point. So I was like, well, let me start digital organizing. So I did some pictures. It was a 3-month project. It was the worst.
3 months?
3 months. I think I charged $200.
Oh,
yes.
We all have those stories where you're like, I did all this work for less than $100 or something like that.
Yes. And I didn't know any better, but okay, so shout out to the digital photo organizers, because it is work. And so I did that, and then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that again. So I did home organizing. And then the reason I brought up the personal development is because I ended up talking to a friend, a coach friend, and she was like, what do you really want to do? And I was like, in some way, shape, or form, somehow I came out with saying I want to coach. So I jumped into life coaching. And I was like trying to teach people like what I've done, and some of the milestones that I hit throughout that process was like, I dropped 100 pounds. I had run a marathon for the first time. Like, and so I was like, okay, I have something to offer, like life coaching. And then I found out, like, after hiring a very expensive business coach and like doing all of those things, that when I was trying to build a life coaching business, that I am not a coach. I am a consultant. I like to
Okay.
tell you what to do. I don't like to like hear like you and help you figure it out. Like, I kind of like to tell people what to do. So
Be very direct. I know that
yes.
feeling.
Yes. So that's kind of how that was a couple of businesses. And then after I realized that I did not want to be a life coach, this is where the magic happened into ops consulting. So
Yeah.
I had a friend who was an entrepreneur friend, and she was like, I know you're in this rut. You're not really kind of sure what direction you want to take right now. I was also side hustling like all of these things at the time. And she's like, but I need help with my systems. I like, her business coach told her, hire somebody to develop these systems. She turned to me for whatever reason. And I was like, she's like, I need somebody to draft up some SOPs. And I was like, okay. In my head though, my mouth said okay, but in my head I was like, what the fuck are SOPs?
Yep. Yeah. I remember this story.
What? I was like, okay. So I went to town, went to Google, and then when I ended up helping her and I drafted my first SOP, I had this energetic shift in my body that said, this is it.
Which
Like,
not
it
many
was,
people have when it comes to
yes.
SOPs.
I know that's funny, right? And I was like, it didn't feel, and I think this is so important to say, because I think so many times like we hear so much media pushing like follow your passion. It did not feel like a passion. And I think that's important because it's different, right? It felt like I was in business. It did not feel like I wanted to scream SOPs on the top of a mountain. And I had this like mission about why I wanted to do ops and all this stuff. Like, it wasn't like that, right? I
Yeah.
had to go and search for why and look back and look forward. And I had to like understand why I was good at organizing, like organizing businesses, organizing homes, organizing photos, like, and wanting to help people in the life coaching space. Like, I had to really dig deep for my why after I had that like knowing in my body. And so I wanted to point
Yeah.
that out again, because I feel like it's different from a lot of people just saying like, well, find your passion. Like, shit, we're multi-passionate. Okay. Like,
Right.
if you told me to go find my passion, like I would be doing 20 different things at the same time. Like, that
I
wasn't
hate that
working
statement
for
so
me.
much. Like,
Yeah.
what is your like, I get the whole what is your purpose, but I'm like, I feel like there's 5 different things that come up and I can't answer that question with one thing, you
Yeah,
know? Like,
exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that's how I landed on ops. And then from there, I just developed myself in the online space from like an OBM role. I guess that's what it was doing at the time when I kind of started, to system strategist to ops consultant. And that's where I'm landed now.
yes, I love that. I love
Yeah.
hearing people's origin story because I sometimes
Oh,
will
me
see,
too.
like, I knew parts of your business, but I didn't know some of that. So I love hearing people's origin story of like the true of like the struggle. Like, it's not like
Oh,
I just became this overnight success and I'm killing it in the ops world. I'm killing it in whatever business I'm in. And no, there was like struggle. And it's just such a good reminder for all of us that, you know, just start, you'll figure it out as you go along. It's not, you don't have to have it figured out perfectly. And there are people who
sure.
tweak and just do what they need to do and get through it. And there's going to be hard projects that you just have to get through until the end.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
just be
I'm
like, I'm not
sure,
doing that again.
yeah, and I'm sure for you too, like you have examples of like your business when you started does not look like it looks today, right? Like
No.
the offers or like anything like that. Like, yeah, I think building a business is, I think, very much building yourself, you know,
Oh yeah.
and like
Yeah.
just getting back to like what you want to do, like you said, and what you don't want to do, and like figuring it out. So yeah, it's and continuing to tweak, because your business today will not look like your business in 5 years, you know, so just knowing that.
Exactly. everything, I always am like, everything is a work in progress. Like I follow a lot of continuous improvement stuff. Like that was
Yeah.
what my background was in for school. And like, that's where my career was before I did this. So like that thought process is constantly flowing within me, is like, there's always something that I could tweak to make it better. And it's
Mhm.
always, it doesn't have to be a big tweak to make the biggest difference. It's like the small things, like you mentioned, like it is, but they can be the biggest impact that you
Yep.
have. And you don't want to have too many big changes within your business. I see entrepreneurs who are like, I'm gonna make this big change, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, you're really like, it's just really disruptive to everyone on their team or everyone. And it
Mhm.
then they struggle to find like their footing again, I guess is like the
Yeah,
best
for
way to put
sure.
it.
For sure.
But yes, I
That's what
totally
they have
attest to
us
that.
for. Like the visionaries, like I mean, I'm sure we're both visionaries, right? We have to be to run our own company, but we're very much ops and integrator spirits, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
visionaries definitely come in hot with those ideas, right? Those big ideas.
They're like, I'm going to change everything and it has to be
Yeah.
done by next week. And I'm like, nope, that's not possible. You're going to throw the team in a huge tailspin. You're going to spend so much money. And I'm like,
Yeah.
are you sure? Because you just had the same kind of thing happen 2 months ago. Like, we just changed everything. You sure you want to change
Yes,
it again?
for sure, for sure. Bless their hearts, right?
Yeah.
Bless their heart.
I mean, I love it. Like, it
Yeah.
just keeps you on your toes, but also, girl, you are throwing money to the wind at this point. Like,
Yeah,
let's
for sure.
rein it back in.
That's why they need us. They need us.
And yes, they do. They do. And I'm excited for us to talk more about too on, so you talked about your offers and how they've changed. So how did you get to the point of, and what inspired the 4-hour work day? I mean, I've been following your journey online. Obviously, we're friends on Facebook. I see you post about it and share your struggles. So kind of what inspired it, and how did you get your business in this position? Because some people find it impossible to do 4-hour work days. And I know my mindset has been like, oh, I can't do that if I'm a service-based business owner.
Yes, I see. So it started with, I think it was initially a desire to work less, right?
Yeah.
And I just knew that I knew I was overworking, but I also
Right.
felt like if I didn't overwork, I wasn't working hard. I had this
Yeah.
conversation yesterday with a DEI consultant, and she said that that's a lot of a cultural thing where we
Mhm.
feel like we don't if our bodies don't hurt, or if we don't stress ourselves out, that we're not working hard. And so I carried that. And so it was a long it started with the desire first to like want to have a life that I work less, which I think a lot of people do.
Yes.
Then I met a coach. Her name is Dr. Julia Colangelo online, and she teaches flow. So she's not like a life coach. She's not like a mystic, but she's kind of like this like beautiful combination of like this magical person in your life that like somehow like her post started to resonate with me about like being in
Mhm.
flow. And she threw a workshop. It was a very low ticket workshop. I think it was like a couple $100. I joined her workshop, and in the workshop she was spot coaching people, but I was like too nervous to speak up, so I didn't necessarily get spot coached. But for some reason, even though she didn't say this out of her mouth, but for some reason that was the unlock and the permission that I needed to
Mhm.
work less.
I
And
love
so
that.
it's and I attest this to if anybody, if you've heard of like the term codependency and how you can detach this, they talk about detachment a lot. I
Mhm.
felt like I detached from this belief that I had to work hard in that moment in that workshop. So that was like step two. Like step one is I was like, I had the belief and I was like influenced. Step two is like that detachment and that change of mindset, that change of belief that I had of like, I'm not gonna do this. That was also in the because I'm gonna be 100% real. Like that was also simultaneously a feeling of like, fuck it. Like if I crash and burn, like, oh well, kind of thing. And I know
Yep.
that's not like a a space that like people strive to be in, but I was like, what I'm doing is not working. I have been
Yeah.
working towards a business and $1 million business for 3 years, and I am not a millionaire. It is not working. Overworking is not working. And I kept
Yeah.
telling myself that. And I said, I'm going to take a radical shift to the left, and I'm just going to see what happens. And what helped me get around it too was that I set a 7-day challenge. So
Yeah. I remember that.
your business isn't going to blow up in 7 days, right? So
Yeah.
it started with a 7-day challenge to see how I would feel, how I would do. Am I going to freak out? What am I going to do? And so that to me was like step 2, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then, like you said, so all of that happened like internally. And then from a business standpoint, and like when you're looking at your business, you also have to be set up, right, to
Oh,
do
yeah.
this. Because I did it one day to the next. Like I decided, and the following day, I shut my laptop down after a 4-hour workday. But I only did that because the offer that I have is designed to meet that type of lifestyle. So the offer that I had is, and I even cut it down even more, but the offer that I have is, it's a consulting offer, right? It's an audit, it's an in and out project based thing. And then I don't have like an ongoing commitment to something else other than like servicing my clients. I don't have like a Facebook group that I commit to doing like twice a week or something like that. So it's the offer, and my business commitments were set. And so I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean that you can't be a coach or you can't do certain things, but if your offer is, taking, let's just say like for whatever, how many hours, right? A week, you also got to look at your business commitments. How many hours
Oh,
are
yeah.
those taking? And you got to decide, do I cut hours from my offer and change my offer? Or do I cut hours from my business commitments? Like maybe you're running a Facebook group that you go live on every day or something like that. Or like maybe you do something that's just taking too much of your time, right?
Yeah.
You have to look and evaluate those things and like cut out the waste, right? Like cut
Right.
and decide that you got to do it differently, or you got to not do it at all, or cut down the hours. And
That's a
then
lot of what I think service providers struggle with, is just because I've helped a lot of service providers
yeah,
try to get to this, and it wasn't like, because I remember you talking about like online when I saw you, you're like, I'm doing this, and then you did it the next day, and I was like, I'm intrigued. Like, how did, like, I was curious about like how your offer was, because I see service providers, or I work with service providers, and I'm like, they want to be in that point, and I'm like, I'll be honest, you're not at that point, and you won't be for X amount of like time frame, because what you have right now for your offers isn't working like that, like you said. But also, they're not, if they're like a service based business, they have to then hire someone out to do it, like, so they don't have to, and that is a longer process
yeah,
than automating a couple of things and getting things on lock.
for
That's a whole
sure.
nother thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you said it earlier. The last thing was I had systems in place and a team. I have a virtual assistant that I work with, one virtual assistant, and I had SOPs drafted, things like, and it wasn't perfect. I want to make sure too that like I'm still working through it. I'm very green in this like 4-hour workday. Like think it's been almost 2 months. It was like the end of May. So like June, July. So yeah, almost 2 months that I've been doing this. And so there was a lot of tweaks along the way too, that
Yeah.
I think you just need to be okay with as well. And like you said, if it's hiring somebody, if that's the next step, or if it's drafting those SOPs, all of those things will get you set up. But for me, I had a lot of that already set up in my business. That's why I was able to make a transition. So systems and a team, because
Yep.
you got to have a team to like, literally, I don't handle my social media unless it's like something from my heart, right? And then I'm
Right.
like in the moment and I'm like, okay, let me like post this, but like the posting, the content creation, my copywriter, I forgot, I have a wonderful copywriter. She writes my captions, writes my blogs, writes my emails. Like, so I don't have to do any of that jazz. And honestly, it's low cost. Like,
your emails also are great, hilarious. Like if they're not on her newsletter, get on her newsletter.
I love it. I love it. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I try to get a little spicy in there.
Yeah, I know I saw your post the other day where like it was should I add a song? Like, should you add pop, lock, and drop it? I think it was what it was into your newsletter. And
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
please do it. Like,
I know. No, the pop. So it's so funny what we listened to in the 90s, right? Like,
yeah.
when I was trying to search for, actually, I think the song came out in the 2000s, but when I was trying to search for a song, like a clean, like, because some of these songs are like, I don't want to say they're bad, like we're all adults, right? But they're like talking about hood rat
Vulgar.
this and like talking about pimping that and like shaking your, and I'm like, okay, wait, like, is that too crazy for a newsletter? And even with pop, lock, and drop it, like I have a framework that's a play off of, but like the song itself is like talking about like pop, lock, and drop in your butt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, that's funny. Oh my
No, I
gosh.
think it's great. Sorry, not to cut you off or derail you.
No,
I was
no,
like, got a plug for you. Get on her newsletter.
please. Yeah.
It's great. You got to take it. It's just good to hear from other people too, as well, of like, there is a process to get to where you want to be. And I think so many people, especially non-ops minded people, like my SOPs are constantly a work in progress, and they're going to change. And my instructions were not perfect when I started hiring on team members. But I'm glad that you did bring up the team aspect, because I wanted to hear what you did, or like who you have under you. So you have a VA and the copywriter for your
VA
team.
and
That's all
copywriter for my
you
team.
have that supports your offers right now.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's important for people to understand that, because there's like coaches or big 7-figure, multi-figure businesses that they don't talk about who's under their team or how to structure like the hierarchy of a team. And I feel like some people think they need a big team to make a shift like this in their business.
Yeah.
So,
No.
what are your thoughts, perspective on that? Because you obviously have a very low team, like not a low team, but like a smaller team.
Yeah. No, I think where it started with my team, well, my virtual assistant actually has been with me since like I feel like the beginning. So like she's
Aww.
bless her heart, she's gone through so many changes and she's such a trooper. But I when I was thinking about team, I was thinking about, and I mean, this is probably not new, but I was thinking about like the tasks that don't that take too much energy from me.
Yeah.
And I like to write, but I noticed, and I wrote my emails up until like maybe a month or so ago, but I like to write, but I like to write about like what's on my heart, and what's on my heart is not always ops at the moment.
I know
And
that
so
feeling.
I'm like, so I'm going to outsource my writing. And like, so I think it's getting clear on like, when you're thinking about cutting your business hours, like get clear on like, what is the role you want to play in your business? Do you want to market, right? Do you want to be a marketer? Like I want to market my business. I mean, not that like I don't want to be like sitting on a beach and like doing nothing and hearing cha-ching, but like to run my business, like if I had to choose the pillar that I am the strongest in and that I enjoy, it is marketing. It is being on camera, being silly, like talking it up, like all of those things. But it doesn't mean I don't like other things, but that's my strongest suit. And that's where I would feel the most comfortable, and what's taking less of an energy suck, right? For me to do. So, I outsourced everything else. Like even with marketing, there's admin tasks like scheduling. And even with marketing, there's writing captions, like, so I didn't like that, right? So it's like all of that, like I'm outsourcing. So that was my thought when building a team. Like I got really clear on like, first, what is the process? What's my process? That what is my strategy, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to do email marketing? Yes or no? Am I going to do social media marketing? Yes or no? And then going deeper, what is the strategy for my email marketing? Is that 2 emails a month? Is that 1? Is that whatever it is what am I going to do for social media? Is it 1 platform? Do I want it to move to like 5 platforms? Do I want it YouTube? Do I want, and it's asking yourself, like, what is my process
That's so key. I say this all the time too. So I'm like,
Yes.
thank you for preaching it.
Yes. What is my process? And then doing your process. I always say to like, you have to do your process. Like you
Oh
can't
yeah.
hire a team to like make something happen that you haven't like worked out some of the kinks. Like specifically, I feel like you see this a lot with like offers and like delegating stuff like that. Like you can't really delegate your delivery if you haven't, if it's always going to be changing, right?
Right.
And so again, it could evolve, it could change and tweaks, you could change strategy, that's fine, but you want to like do your process and know your process and what how you want it to look before you make the hire. And
Exactly.
so yeah, that was my thought on like how I was thinking about hiring a team and like what I did to like bring on my VA, and like even just delegating my emails was kind of like it hurt my heart a little bit because my email community, I like am in love with them. They don't know this,
Yeah.
but I'm in love with my email community. And so I was very hesitant in delegating that. But like I said, it doesn't mean that I cannot connect with my email community. If I wanted to send them, I send 2 emails right now, but if I wanted to send them like a third email that came from like my heart, right? Like
Yeah.
I want the flexibility and the mental capacity to do that whenever I want. I don't want to
That's
have to
such a
be
good
constrained.
point.
Yeah.
I feel like not enough people talk about this, and I've talked about it with clients. I'm like, just have a standard, like, because that's in my framework, the S is standard. Like, you have to have a standardized week of like what to expect, because that's going to
Yep.
give you that space to like, if you want to put out an extra post. Like, I work with so many visionaries, and they're like, oh, I just want it to come from the heart. I'm like, well, let's like have a plan to like at least have stuff going out related. If you put more, no one's gonna judge you for that. Like,
No.
let's have a minimum and like something the team can expect to happen. Like you said, like what are my instructions? Like what do they expect? Because if you're changing it from week to week or like month to month, I get like that's there are gonna be changes. There's gonna be miscellaneous projects, but like give them something to expect. Like they know what they're
100%.
going to do. They're going to become more efficient at it. It's going to be easier for them and for you because you're not recreating all these instructions all the time or just coming up with things on the fly, like you want to have that role pretty well defined of like this is what I want to do. This is the standard. But but then you have the mental capacity to be like, oh, I want to do this. Because when I hired someone on, I'm like, I don't like the writing. I don't like the marketing. I'm like, I'll put my pieces of like, these are my stories that I want to go out. Can you find
Mm-hmm.
a place to put them in? Like, here's what I want it to look like, kind of thing. Or like, this is the stuff that comes from me. But I'm like, plug it that makes sense because I don't want it to be just like random.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need like the
Yeah.
guidance sometimes.
Yep. And that's where like the hiring process, and even well, even if it's like talking to a friend that's, been through it or has
Mm-hmm.
gone through a couple of bad hires maybe, or but I always plug experts, right? If you need something done in your business and you're not the expert in it, like I like highly recommend to invest. Like
Oh
obviously
yeah.
you got to find your level of investment, right? Whether that's like you're at the course level where you only have a couple $100, or if you're at the consultant level where you can hire a consultant. But like even what you're talking about, why I'm saying that is because like when that comes down to like hiring, like picking the right person for you and knowing that you want to write, you need somebody to write copy, you just identified that you want somebody to take your you want to tell somebody stories and you want them to plug in those stories into your copy. Like you need somebody, a copywriter who matches that process,
Oh
because
yeah.
that's your process, that's how your brain works, right?
Yep.
My copywriting process is a little different. I have to have it
Mm-hmm.
pulled out of me. So like it's
Yeah.
just so even just us two, we would have two different copywriter types,
Yep.
right? Because that's how your brain works and my brain works is like, I don't know what to say. Can you tell me? And I have like these
Yeah.
content pillars and they're like, okay, well, here, write your ideas down here and like maybe we'll talk about this and how about this? And then like I'm like, oh yeah, that brings up a story of like XYZ. And then the copywriter's like, okay, got it. But like I
Yep.
need somebody skilled enough to pull that out of me, because
Yep.
I'm sometimes I can't be creative on the like at the drop of a hat. I just can't, you
Yeah.
know?
I'm
So
the same way. It takes like
yeah,
an energy, like I will have a time block for creating content and it usually gets shifted. Like I'll be honest, like I time block, but I move my stuff and it'll just because I'm not in the energetic zone. And,
yep,
but then sometimes it'll pop up and I'm like yesterday, I had all this stuff planned to do. I mean, I got most of it done, but I got so inspired for a couple of posts. Like it just hit me and I
yeah,
went right into my ClickUp and I was like typing it all out and I'm like assigning it to different days of like, because my person will edit it and then
yep,
they do like the hashtags, they'll make sure the CTA is good, a hook is good, all that like nitty gritty stuff. And then the
yep,
posts, because like people will be like, oh my God, I loved your post. And I'm like, I didn't even went out today. Sometimes I don't know. I gotta go double check because like she does
yep.
such a good job of like taking it off my plate that I'm like, I don't know what she might have moved something like, like I'm like, I don't know. Thank you. Like it's from
Yeah.
me, but I don't know where it's gonna end up sometimes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I know. I freaked out one time. Total side note, but my VA, so she's getting better at social, right? And
Yeah.
she wants to eventually move into like a social media management role. And so I don't pay attention to LinkedIn that much. So I was like,
Mm.
yeah, do what you need to do on LinkedIn. I guess I had this conversation with her and had forgot. And she was posting things at a different time. And I was like, hey, I saw something go out on Instagram and I didn't see it go out on LinkedIn. And I'm like, what happened? And blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh no, LinkedIn's primary posting time for you is like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, awesome. But like, I totally, like you said, like, I don't even know what's what sometimes
Yep.
or like what something's coming out. But yes, but I'm like, oh, you got it. Okay. Yes, you're right. Like you got LinkedIn. Like that's you, girl, you know?
And I
So
think this brings up a good point too. Like with going to 4 hours a day, like what was your process? Because I see this come up with a lot of entrepreneurs and myself specifically too, is letting go of some of that control.
mm,
Because a lot of us who are entrepreneurs or small business owners are very much type A control freak, like personalities. So
yeah.
did you struggle with that? Was it easy for you? Kind of like what process did you go through for that?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was easier
Mhm.
because I have been working with my virtual assistant since the beginning. So I had a
Right.
lot of trust in her already and we had
Gotcha.
a rhythm going already. So but what I found is that I do spend more of my time managing
Mhm.
because I, as a result of me doing these 4-hour work days, my brain is like, you can repurpose this, you can do this,
Mhm.
and so what I'm doing is so I'll use an example. I had a thought about putting testimonials, adding testimonials to my like content, right? And I
Yeah.
had testimonials in a form and that's where it started. So I
Right.
needed to get those testimonials in some shape or form on social on a good rotation. So I let go of that task. So I thought up the process. Okay, I want
Yes.
them in graphics. I want them twice a week. I want them on Mondays and Wednesdays. And the
Mhm.
next level to that is video. But right now, I'm just going to do written right now because, again,
Yeah.
I don't want to overload my virtual assistant with like 5 new tasks that she hasn't done before. So what I did is
Mhm.
I thought through, I'm working piece by piece and I slowed myself down, even though my idea is like, okay, 2 testimonials a week, 2 video testimonials a week to go out with that, repurposed on LinkedIn. We can also put them on YouTube Shorts. We can also put them on like before all of that
Yeah.
happened, I said,
There's
you
steps.
already, yes, you already know how to post on Facebook and LinkedIn. I know that. Here's the process for grabbing the testimonials. And I made a quick video. I
Yeah.
told her, please make graphics. It's scheduled, follow our schedule, our publishing guidelines, because I added them on my publishing guidelines. And then obviously create content. She has a process for creating content cards and I review it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I've been able to delegate and trust more because I'm
Mhm.
working task by task and I'm slowing myself down
Yeah.
slower by slower. And I'm giving her the opportunity to learn and to also tweak what maybe doesn't work and be creative, give me feedback. And then I ask her, hey, I have a new task for you. Do you feel you can take this on? how are you feeling with everything? Like
Yeah.
I'm constantly asking her, like, what can I do to make this easier? Let's look at this process. Like we had this conversation yesterday. Let's look at this process. I noticed some publishing dates were missing. And I'm like, hey, I don't know if I put this in the SOP, because I have a rule of her pulling up an SOP, even though she's done the task a million times. She is required to pull up an SOP, and I trust that she's doing this. But pull up an SOP every single time and review the checklist to make sure that everything's done, because we're human, right?
Right.
So like, of course we're going to forget to like put a publishing date in there or like something like that, right? So like I was like, hey, I don't know if this is in the SOP or not, but if not, can you update the SOP with the step and then make sure that this happens moving forward? And so like, anyway, so it's just this like, it's
Yeah.
teamwork, right? It's teamwork. It's like this like back and forth, and I make sure that I don't overload her. I've also been like, I don't know if this goes along with the question. Now I'm off on a tangent, but like
It's okay.
rewarding her. I just paid for some personal development for her to like get some more social media skills that I know is going to help my business, of course. But
Oh yeah.
she hired a coach that will give her skills and teach her how to run like a social media agency. So I'm helping her grow too. So like
Yep. You
it's
have to
all,
invest in them a little bit too. Like once
yeah,
everyone's like, oh, I'm afraid to invest in people. And I'm like, okay, yeah, get through the trial period, make sure they're a quality person. But once they're in it for the long haul with you, you should be rewarding them, invest in them, like give them the tools to succeed. Like I held on so tight at the beginning with my assistant, who is also my sister. And she was like, you are not letting me do stuff, like, which is great that she's my sister, because she's like, you're not letting me do stuff. Like you told me we were going to be doing this and it's not what it is. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I need to release some of this and just give you ownership of the role and just
yeah,
understand like you're going to do it. At least it's going to get done. And even if there's some mistakes, like I'm not going to be like, you messed this up. Like, like I'm like,
yeah,
hey, notice this happened. Can you just make sure to add this into the instructions or add it to our checklist? Or like, can you remember to like something went out wrong or something, like, and it happens. Even if I was doing it, it could happen. Like,
yeah,
like
for sure.
I don't expect it to be like, there's human error. There's always going to be human error with
Yep.
things. So, and there's tech errors. We all know that. Like
Yeah.
we talk about automation, there's tech errors. Um, so I totally get that. And I love that you're very open about, even though you're an ops person, it's still like a work in progress for the SOPs. We don't
100%.
know. Like I'm also very bad at doing things for my own business that I do for clients, because we
Mhm.
always neglect our own business, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
And I don't know about you, but I don't like doing my own ops. So even though I'm creating these processes, I'm not the one anymore drafting SOPs. I'm not the
mhm,
one updating SOPs. Like I'm not
yeah,
writing those anymore, because my virtual assistant, one of her tasks was, or one of our training periods was, this is how you write an SOP. This is
yeah,
my expectation, is for you to review this checklist with every single task, every single time you do it. And even that, like, I know seems like stringent, but I asked her, I said, I have this idea. I want us to eliminate some of this error. Are
yeah,
you open to working this way? Because
yeah,
I want to be, because it's such a small team, I didn't want her to feel like I didn't trust her, but at the same time, back to your question about being type A and letting go of control, that's my way of knowing that it's going to get done in the way that I want it to get done.
yeah,
And that's also my way of knowing, are you using the SOP, or are you doing it right, or are you not? But I also like, simultaneously, I tell her, you're in control of this SOP. If something is not working, like,
yeah,
you change it. If you don't like the way that like the scheduler that we're using, the whatever, like, because you own that, you tell me what you need to make your
yeah,
job easier, and I will make it happen. If it costs a couple extra bucks, like, we're just going to have to suck it up, because I don't want you stressed out about,
right,
taking extra steps on something, when just because my training video said to do it that way, like, no, ma'am, like, you
yeah,
control it. Like, I don't control it. I
yeah,
just want the end result done. But
right,
again, I want to be able to go back to an SOP and reference. Like the publishing date is a great example of like, oh, I don't know if I put it in there. I didn't check if I put it in there. I just said,
Yeah.
this is what needs to change, add it in there. And next time, if I see a publishing date messing up, that's how you know like their performance, right? Like, is it up
Exactly.
to
And
par? Is
so
it
like,
not, you know?
if she moves up to be a social media manager in your business, you have everything documented to bring someone else in who's never been in. Like, people don't account for turnover or like people moving places. I'm not always going to say it's like turnover, but like they forget. And this is the biggest problem I see in a lot of businesses is just knowledge transfer. It's just such a huge problem. Like when I worked in corporate, it was such a big problem and no one wanted to take the time to fix it. Like we had a very much older culture and they were all engineers and like they were all going to retire or they could leave.
Oh,
And
yeah.
all of that stuff was going to be going out the window with them because it wasn't documented or like in anybody else's had access to it. So it's like
Yeah,
knowledge transfer and having transparency in your business is so important.
for sure, for sure. And
That's my
giving them,
tangent.
like you said, giving them the freedom to, like with your sister, like giving her the freedom to own that task or that
Yeah.
process or a particular department that you want them to own. And really,
Yep.
when you let people fly, they will fly. And
Yeah.
or they will not fly in the direction you want them to fly. And that's how you know, oh, this is not the right person for me. And
Yeah.
even so, like, you know, and I'm very open with my virtual assistant about at some point I thought I needed to bring somebody else on because she didn't have the skills that I needed her to have, and my business was growing quickly, and I was like, I don't know, like I don't know if she can handle it, you know, in my head, right? And later on I knew the problem was like I needed to slow down and write down the SOPs and take the steps that she is willing and has the want to learn.
Yeah.
So I just need to be the leader for her to do that. But
Yeah.
let's say that she wasn't like that, and let's say that she like was making all of these errors. I know at that point I would have been like, okay, we're going to cut ties, right? And I need to
Yeah.
bring somebody else in to
Yeah.
do the work. Yeah.
That is a very good point too. Cause like, yeah, if there's errors, a lot of people will think it's the person. Some people forget to look back and see like, well, did I as the CEO or I as the leader provide them? Did I set them up for success within my business? So I think
Yep.
that sometimes is overlooked. But then if you did, and you can say, yes, I did, and here's all the things that we have in place, they're just not utilizing it. They're maybe not a good fit for the team.
Yep. For
So
sure.
I think that's such a good point to make.
Yes.
And I want to ask too another question about the workday is what was like your biggest takeaway or biggest like what has been your biggest takeaway from transitioning from working 10-12 hour days to working 4 hours a day?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway has been I want to go like personal with this, but like business wise, I think the biggest takeaway is that it'll be okay. When you have your business streamlined with the things that we talked about, like, you know, your offer is in a place that you have it designed, you don't have time commitments that are pulling you, and you have a strong system and a team to support you. And again, that team doesn't have to be, it can be one person, right? It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that has been the biggest surprise and takeaway from a business standpoint. From a personal standpoint, the biggest aha was like, now what am I going to do? What do I even like?
Yeah.
What do I like? Okay, I wanted to like not work so much, but like for what? What am I doing on a daily basis? So I caught up on Gossip Girl. I binge watched the whole season. I started floating the river with friends and my husband, and I just am tiptoeing. So the biggest aha was that I had gotten away from myself and knowing what brings me joy. And
I think
I'm
that's
slowly,
so many.
yes, and I'm slowly inching my way back, and it's a process, right? And I've actually just stopped drinking since I'm training for a marathon again. I started running again. And so even with stopping and drinking, like typically when I would have extra time, I would be so tired that I would like, my reward would be like a margarita, like a pretty strong margarita. And like, so even without alcohol, I'm having to like be bored and like figure it out, like, and be like, okay, like, do I dance right now? Do I want a coffee right now? Do I do I want to pet my dog? Like, I'm not too sure.
Like, what do I do with this free time? And I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
people too, it's like, since you brought up the drinking thing, it's like,
Yeah.
that's just a social, like, fallback, whatever word you want to use, like default.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, you want to go grab a drink? Or you want to go grab dinner and drinks? Or, like that's all, at least around the people I know in my friend group, it's always like,
Yeah.
you want to go grab a
Yeah.
drink? Do you want to go to the winery? It doesn't mean like we're going to get hammered or anything, but
No,
like,
yeah, yeah. It's social.
yeah, but that's always the default. And then it's like, what do I do? Because like when I was pregnant, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, but I still want to
Yeah.
be social, like what do you do to fill up that time
Yep,
for
for
you?
sure. And you have to figure it out. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
joy list that I created a long time ago that just came to mind right now that I think I can reference. Yeah, so I when I was first in my personal development journey, that was like actually like step one for me, is I wrote down what brings me happiness. And it was like solo dates, like coffee working out of a coffee shop, like dancing, like dance parties, like some of these things that I knew I wrote down. So I think I can go back to my joy list and maybe pick a thing, right, and like do that and see what happens. But definitely I don't want to fill my calendar with a commitment just yet. Maybe it is volunteering, but I'm so worried that I'm gonna get, even with volunteering, I feel like I'm worried that I'm gonna get sucked back into like filling it with like work.
Yeah.
So I'm like detoxing my brain right now to just be like chill and like,
I love that.
Okay with like the unknown and not knowing exactly what to do and maybe watching a little too much TV, but eventually I think I'll figure it out. But I'm enjoying the process and like the space I have to think and dream and all of the things. So yeah, those are the takeaways that I have.
Love that. I think that's so important too. And the detoxing your brain, I'm definitely going to be doing that after our wedding, because that's when my brain, if I'm not working or taking care of the kids, it's wedding planning, because we have 2 months, less than 2 months now.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like in
You're
full
so
on
close.
planning mode of like, what are the small details that we need to make sure are happening. But
yeah,
I love the whole concept of detoxing your brain from working. So I will definitely be doing that here soon. So thank you for that. And also just the total, there's so many nuggets of great things that we've talked about today. And I just so appreciate you coming on and sharing about it and being open about it, because sometimes in the online space, people forget to be transparent or authentic. And I'm like getting teary eyed because I'm like emotional about like just there's struggles in our businesses that some people don't want to talk about, but I wish people would have said when I started out. Like it doesn't have, you're like, you brought up, like I had things in place before I got here. And I feel like there's a lot of coaches or a lot of people or gurus in the online space who are like, you can do it. And they don't talk about what steps need to happen to get there. Or like, yeah, just throw in a 4-hour work day and nothing's going to happen. Like, I'm sure not, like you didn't have probably a big dip in revenue because you had key things ready for you. It wasn't like you hadn't done some of the core pieces of work and was like, I'm just going to take a bunch of vacation time, and you 100. Probably would have seen like a dip in potential revenue because you didn't have some fundamental foundational pieces in your business.
100%. I actually increased revenue, which is
I love that.
Insane. And I think a lot of people say that as a sales pitch. So I want to be sure that I'm not selling a 4-hour workday. I don't have a course. No. I don't have something on the back end as a rouge to like sell anything to anyone watching this. Like I am truly just another CEO like you that is figuring it out. And I refuse to buy any coach's 4-hour work week, 4-hour work day, whatever it might be, because to your point of this online space, like first of all, they're selling you something, right? But second of all, like what worked for them may not work for you. And I think to your point of like, there was a lot that happened on the front end. There was definitely a lot that happened on the front end. And I wanted to make another point on like what people don't talk about, but
Yes.
which is like 0 months, like 0 income months.
Yep.
That's another thing that I went through. But I just you have to just be, again, I kind of walked through what got me prepped to get there. You may not need all of those steps. And I think that's such an important lesson for a business, especially if you're a little bit newer or you're newer to the online space. It's like trusting your own journey and knowing like, if you want to get there, you already have the tools within you to do it. You don't need nobody to show you the steps. You don't need nobody to walk you through a course. You already know, like, you're smart. You know what you need to do. You know what you're spending your time on. You know what brings you energy and doesn't. You know all of these things. You know how to get yourself there. It's just a commitment. And again, maybe that detachment of like, I don't have to do this. And even like make that little challenge, right? Of like, for me, I had to do that. But again, for somebody else, it could be different. But I had to like say, oh, 7 days. Okay, we'll just go see what happens. And then it turned into, okay, 30 days. And then I was like, I'm never going back to that.
Yeah.
Like ever, but
and I think that's such a point of like, you do. And I think there's some people who would say like, well, I don't know what I like, or I don't know this. You're never going to know unless you test it out. Like, I did a bunch of different offers before I have the offers I have now. And I'm still tweaking my offers because I'm like doing some of them and I'm like, I don't really have a passion for it anymore. Or I don't have the drive to do that anymore because now I have 2 kids and I want it to look different. Like you as the business owner, if you're watching, you're not going to know unless you try. You're not going to know what you like until you try it. And it's okay if it changes too, because you're human. And like you said, you're like, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm doing a marathon. Like, you like to drink before, you still like to drink, but like, you're going to have periods of time where your preferences can change, and it's okay to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. Love it. Love it.
Oh, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad. And if you guys aren't following, you will be sharing more. We were talking about this before we started recording, but how to go from 0 to anything is also a lot that you've been sharing about. So just follow along, get on the newsletter. She will share more about this journey if you're interested in it. I know you're not selling anything on it, but like, hey, it's good to have info. It's motivating for me. Like, I've loved following your journey. That's why I wanted to have you on, because I think more people can be inspired by your journey.
Awesome. Good. Yes. Like we talked about this before you hopped on, like sometimes somebody just needs to hear it from the right person at the right time. And I think podcasts are wonderful to have guests, because really you can talk to the camera all day, and this is the same for everyone, but like somebody may not need to hear the message from you directly. They may have needed to hear it from me. Right. And vice versa. Like some people may need to hear it from my guest versus like somebody else. Right. So I'd love for people to follow actually 0 to Anything Media on Instagram. It's like at 0 to Anything Media, because I will be ramping that up slowly but surely, my second brand that goes along with like, you can go from 0 to anything that you want in your life, and even 4-hour work days if you want it.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I'm so thankful if you're watching the replay, well, not live. We're not doing this live. I'm used to being live. So drop what you learn below. So leave us comments, leave us questions. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.